Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Gold Split Podcast. So, this is a little different from what I normally post. If you've been watching me on Twitch for a while, which you probably should, so I'll leave a link in the description, you'll know that I've wanted to do this for quite a long time. Anyway, this podcast interviews speedrunners to get to know them and the communities they're part of a little bit more. And our first guest today was my good friend, SnowyMoogle. Please leave a comment down below on who you would like to see in the next episode of the podcast. And please subscribe to check out more podcasts and projects of mine in the future. I'll also leave links to where you can find our guests in the description as well. Enjoy, guys. 3, 2, 1. This is it. This is the start. Welcome, everybody, to the Gold Split Podcast. This is a new podcast that I've been wanting to do this for such a long time, and finally I've been kind of pushed to do this. I'm here with our first and very special guest here, SnowyMoogle. All of you probably know him. He's been in my streams many a time. He's speedran so many different games. He's been on ESA a couple times, even on AGDQ earlier this year. So, Snowy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being the first ever guest here.
I'm glad to be here, and I don't think I've ever.
Wait, you cut out. Shit. This is already.
I've never been on ESA.
Really? Well, there goes my.
I've never been on ESA.
What were you on? That was. Or oh wait, no, I'm thinking of horrible games. That's what I was thinking.
I've been on. I did AGDQ, I did Horrible Games, I did Power Up with Pride, and I did Midspring Speed Fling.
You've done too many things.
Which is
I can't keep track of
which is a Midwest Speed
Fest
event.
Shit! I'm already a really bad interviewer. Oh my god. I don't know. I've only co-commentated and like done things like I barely keep track of all that shit, but yeah. Anyway, you're a man of many talents, so I mean, what are you gonna do?
I have run multiple games at multiple events.
Yeah, which is honestly that's pretty dope though. But so why don't we start from just like the beginning? You started speedrunning about a year ago now, right? We kind of started speedrunning around the same time with Scooby-Doo. So
yeah, I want to say it was like it was like June, July 2020. We both started running Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights. I was kind of like at the time, the past like year or so before then, I played Smash, and then the past like I think 1.5-ish years, I played Smash, and then I went over to like traditional fighters, and that was kind of like my main competitive focus for a while. And then when COVID hit. A lot of fighting games have like very bad netcode, so you get like very frustrated playing them online. So that kind of it uses what's called delay-based netcode. So you literally just add like 2 to 4 frames of delay on everything you do, and that's very frustrating. And so like a few months after COVID happened, I kind of looked towards like on maybe something to scratch that competitive itch. And I'd been watching GDQ for, I want to say, like, probably 4-ish years before 2020.
Oh, wow.
But like, I guess COVID and a lack of fighting games kind of gave me that push. And I feel like a lot of other people, I kind of just look towards a game I'm very nostalgic for, which is Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights. I've beaten that game probably at least 10 times before. I
really?
like speedran it. Yeah, just like casually playing it. I played it with my brother a bunch. He shares like the nostalgia for that game as well. It was like it was definitely like one of the first games I played. Probably back when like I guess I've technically played that game for 15 years. I didn't start speedrunning till like 2020.
So can I ask, because you said that basically nostalgia kind of helped you, and just you being in competitive nature kind of got you into speedrunning. What made you pick Scooby of all of those games? Like, out of all the games you've played as a child, like, there's surely other ones that you had nostalgia for, but why specifically Scooby?
Um, I don't know. I honestly don't know why specifically Scooby. Like a couple other games from childhood would be like Pac-Man World 2, Sonic Heroes. There's a
Sonic
couple other Scooby
Heroes.
games like Unmasked and Mystery Mayhem. I remember playing those a lot as well. I think it was maybe upon like looking into them a little bit more. Um, I think Frights just seemed kind of the most interesting. But I think Frights is the one I think I have like the most like nostalgia for. It's definitely the one like out of all those games I mentioned, it's definitely the one I went back to the most.
Okay.
Why I kept going back to it, I don't know, but I think I have the most nostalgia for that game, and I feel like not to speak for other people when they pick their speed games, but I feel like games people have enjoyed casually and like games they're nostalgic for are definitely like two pretty big factors in
Oh
picking
yeah.
what games to run.
hmm I mean, I think also like I'm sure other runners have talked about this with just like licensed games, but just for some, I think just 2020 like with the pandemic kind of helped out with this too. But just like licensed games when we were like growing up, I feel like we're at the peak of what they were because now it's like in
Hmm.
some cases, I mean, obviously like Scooby isn't the perfect game, and if you really want to get into the casual Scooby conversation that we've had like on streams and stuff a lot, but like compared to like other licensed games that came after it or like weird like old NES, like they've like what were those NES and like Genesis Scooby games, like that's not as
Uh,
it's I don't remember the names of them.
I don't know much about them,
I
but
could look them up.
there's a lot of there were some like there was at least one SNES game. There's some like point and click PC games from the 90s as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like that kind of like yeah, that or I guess that like GameCube era, usually like GameCube PS2, especially with like PS2 like sold extremely well. And that was also an
Yeah.
era when like you'd see a lot of licensed games get ported to like so many platforms. Even if it like wasn't even the same game in the end. But
Oh my god,
if
yeah.
you look at a lot of the games, I guess Frights isn't the best example. But think of like Unmasked and Mystery Mayhem both have handheld versions that
hmm
are completely different games, but they still share the same name. I definitely feel like it was common for licensed games to be like all three main platforms plus a handheld at least.
Yeah, that's true. Probably because they just wanted to spread out like their market more, make the most money as they possibly
I mean,
could.
I mean, they were selling licensed games. They were definitely just trying to like I'm pretty sure they were just trying to market it as like, oh, check it out, we made a Scooby-Doo video game. You like the show? I mean, that's what I saw
That's
as like a
yeah,
5-year-old. Like,
exactly. Yeah. Or it's just like parents too, where it's like, oh, I know this property and this property. Happy
hmm,
birthday, Merry Christmas, or Hanukkah or whatever.
yeah.
Like that's just how it kind of went.
Mhm.
But just to get off topic a little bit, and I've always wondered this because I know that you've been into fighting games. We've talked about it a lot, and like
Hmm.
especially like you can just like go on and on about all this tech and like the competitiveness and stuff. And so, do you think that the competitiveness of you doing fighting games before like you started speedrunning kind of helped you like grind the speedruns that you do?
I think there's like certain things with I guess from like a skill point, no. I don't think like playing fighting games technically made me better at any game I've run, but I think in terms of mindset, it helped a lot. I think there's a lot of interesting correlations you can make between that I've seen like with like mindsets in both fighting games and speedrunning. I think one of the big things was kind of just like trying to focus on your own improvement. Um, that was definitely something in fighting games. You'd try to be like, okay, block this attack a certain way, or try to get this combo or this hit confirmed
Mm-hmm.
mid-match. And then speedrunning, you can kind of relate it to like, oh, I want to get through this level without making any mistakes, like trying to get better at this certain section or trick, things like that. as opposed to like I think a lot of people can kind of fall in the trap of in fighting games. It's like, oh, they kind of just measure their like skills as a player based on like whether or not they win. And a lot of people will go to tournaments and kind of look at like, oh, I went like 0 and 2, and then I went 1 and 2, so that means I've improved. Kind of, I guess I'm not describing it too well, but a lot of people would basically just look at like, okay, how many sets did I win and lose today, and kind of use that to measure their improvement. And I think in speedrunning, that's kind of just like looking at whether or not you PB, or just like comparing yourself to others on the leaderboard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both like kind of measuring your like fighting game wins is a sign of like how good you are, or kind of like your leaderboard placement in PBs like can lead to people kind of like falling to the trap of like a toxic mindset towards themselves.
Mm.
Because like you especially like if you try to focus on the little things, you get that feedback a lot more. And it's like kind of like something new you can work on every time you go to a tournament or you're booting up your speed run. So I find like kind of realizing that mindset kind of long before I did speedrunning helped out, because like okay, I can have like a day where I don't get any PBs. I don't even like I'm resetting a bunch. I don't get a run past like the halfway point. But even something like okay, I'm still doing this level really well, or this trick's been going particularly well today. It's kind of like focusing on little things like that. I think is something I learned from fighting games and helped a lot in speedrunning.
Okay. Yeah, and honestly, I could see that too because I think like out of a lot of the runners, I mean, just Scooby is the big comparison because we're both pretty predominant with that game.
Mhm.
I would say that you were probably the most relaxed, and like if you'd mess up, you'd be like, oh well, time to start again. But then you see other people like, I mean, I always had that toxic mindset, especially. But if you ever like Jolly, Zigzagoon, or like Nastani and like Mortal, they would all be like, "Fuck, man! Oh, I rubbed up against the wall. My run is over." You and it's like it's just such night and day. And I think that's something like that when you're speedrunning, and then especially when you take that to other games, like especially with something like Who's Watching Who. I don't know how you don't get mad in that game. Like you are so relaxed, or at least on the outside, so it seems like you're. I think your mindset is very mature, and I definitely respect that for you, or respect that while you're speedrunning.
I like I think you're giving me a little bit too much credit. I definitely still like
Maybe.
get upset, and I'll definitely have like especially in something like Frights, where it's like you're approaching the end game is it's brutal.
Yeah.
My nerves are definitely like I'm definitely on edge there. And I'll still like get upset if I miss something. Um, but like I think kind of having the mentality of like okay, it'll like I know I'm good at this game. The run will come.
Yeah. And honestly, I think, well, especially with people just starting off in speedrunning, I think obviously when you kind of like start of do it for a long time, you start to see that. But like seeing that from the beginning is not either you don't see it at all, or it's just not easy to kind of like what I'm lacking a word, I guess, comprehend in a way. Because at least when I started speedrunning, like most of the time, you'd watch the top speedrunners in whatever games you'd be interested in. And so then you would just be like, why aren't I as good
Mhm.
as them yet? Or like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, it's time and dedication, but it's also like
Mhm.
you got to be patient and like you can't be too hard on yourself when you're trying to grind and like get better at something. So,
Mhm.
but
Yeah. I think one thing that also helped well, I guess it took Frights for me to learn it, and then I just kind of applied that to other games. Because I don't think I've grinded any game as much as Frights, despite like putting time into like quite a few speed games. But I think kind of that mindset of like there is a lot more time saved than you think.
yeah.
Because you
Mm-hmm.
can definitely like I definitely remember being at a point where like in Frights, when I was like 30 seconds to like a minute behind world record. But it's just like yeah, it just comes with like slow improvements. Once you've kind of
Mm-hmm.
gotten that run without like any big mistakes and you're getting the tricks relatively quickly. I basically it's just like grind after that, and it is kind of discouraging to see like a big time difference and kind of thinking where is that time safe? Where is
Mm-hmm.
it? Because you don't know, and a lot of those little things you're not gonna you'll remember the big mistakes, but you're not gonna remember like a lot of the little things, or
Mm.
even maybe you don't even know what potential like small movement things you can do. But just kind of keeping in mind like yeah, there is a lot more time saved than I think is something that I think helps a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when like I don't know if you were like kind of done with the game already, but I remember you've given me that sort of anecdote before, and it's definitely helped, like especially with some of the newer routing and stuff too. Just like knowing that there
Mhm.
is time save, like you just it's just a slow improvement. But this kind of brings up another question that I have wanted to ask you for a while is when you started speedrunning, what was your main goal like entering with Scooby as your first speed run? And then when did you decide, you know what, why don't we go for a world record? Why don't we go for that sub 25 time?
Um, I think like honestly, I don't remember what my goal was at the start. I think I just wanted something I was happy with, like a run I'm happy with. And I think that's like part of why I stopped running because like even though there's been like route improvements and world record is literally minutes below what my PB is now. I'm happy with the run I have now. Um, I think I'm also like pretty hard on myself with what I consider to be like a run I'm happy with. But
Mm.
I think that was the goal. Just get something I'm satisfied with. I can look back and be like, damn, that was an impressive like show of skill to beat this game under this time. And I think the point where I decided to go for world record was uh, honestly not exactly sure. I'm pretty sure I assume I just got to a point where like my time was low enough, and kind of seeing like honestly, I don't think world record was that optimized until like September or October of last year. And I think part of
Yeah.
that was because Baz, who was world record holder at the time, not to blame him or anything, there really just like wasn't anyone to compete with him.
Hmm.
So he was kind of just like he'd improve his time to kind of gatekeep the rest of us.
Yeah.
But he had like he understandably had like really no motivation to grind his time down because no one else was running, to my knowledge, in like
Hmm.
early 2019 or like early 2020 and 2019. So I think once my time got low enough and I realized like damn, there's quite a bit still to be saved. And I think it was also kind of just like a byproduct of wanting run with. Like world record, I think when I first got it was like a low 25 and like high 24.
Yeah. Which is crazy to think
And I
now.
yeah, and not many like there weren't really any big route improvements. It was just kind of seeing like there's still a lot of time to be saved before I can get a run that I think I was like really happy with. So it kind of just like became a byproduct. I know I know shortly after I got uh my like last world record and what is like still my PB,
Hmm.
I don't think I don't think it lasted that long. It didn't last more than like 2 months or something because like new route change, like big route changes got introduced.
Yeah.
But I still think like even if like Mortal or Jax or Baz or anyone else who was like competing for like top times at the time like beat my record with the route, I I think I still would have like I don't think I would have I was still just happy with my run.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. Honestly, I think just, I mean, a lot of people like Like me and Nastani have talked about this a lot, where we kind of still look at that one run that you've done in awe, and I think that just because I would argue that also like Mortal or just like probably other people who hold world record in like other games kind of do the same thing that you said Baz did, where it's like there's not much competition. You really just want to kind of gatekeep word a little bit, just because there's nobody's really played the game as much as you have, or like anything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was I remember those.
I mean,
That was just crazy time.
I was talking earlier about like try not to like compare yourself to others too much. Just kind of like get a run you're happy with, or at least like that's what I'm
Yeah.
doing, and that's definitely like what I recommend others do as well. But at the same time, like if there's no one else running the game, I understand like the kind of like lack of like motivation. I definitely remember like the September, October of last year when we were like first getting 24s, was like probably the most fun I ever had because we had me, Jax, and Mortal all like almost daily grinding the game to try
Hmm.
and take world record from each other. So even though like ultimate goal is just to get a run I was happy with, the competition like it really get helps you get motivated, and it's like honestly like some of the most fun you can have.
Yeah, it's really cool too in like other communities to see that competition sort of happening as well. I mean, obviously people also kind of like react to competition differently, but like in the case with like you and Mortal and Jax at the time, where you all were sort of like competing with each other, like that energy, like you could feel it, even if you weren't directly involved and you were just watching it, like you could feel like that sort of passion and just energy that you had
Mhm.
going into it. Like this could be the run. Like you wouldn't know. And like who knows if somebody tomorrow is going to get a better run than you, but like
Mhm.
it's just those I mean, with Scooby those days have passed. Maybe something will come up with it again, but it's definitely cool to just look back and kind of just be there at the time. And the same with like other games too, with like some of the more popular speedruns like BFPB or Mario, or even in like smaller communities too. But one question that I also had for you, and I think I know the answer to this, but I wanted to just say this just because I still can't believe you did it, was what made you think about running Who's Watching Who? It's
Um,
such a random DS game to do. Like I know you've
oh,
played it as a kid, um,
yeah.
but I want a little bit
Um,
more context.
so yeah, I played it as a kid. My my memories of that game are not nearly as happy, like Frights or Unmasked or Mr. Mayhem. Like I still enjoyed Mr. Mayhem as a kid. My memories of Who's Watching Who aren't like particularly happy. I think I was just like kind of stumbling through. I think one is that game is extremely easy to pick up. I know we talk about how like frustrating that game is to control, but I think I don't think it took me more than like a day to learn that game. I basically just like skimmed the current world record at the time.
I don't doubt it.
Um, like that game is extremely linear, and you
Hmm.
kind of just learn it as you go. If you're running any percent, which was the only category at the time I started,
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
you got to learn a few like clue and trap locations, but that game is like relatively easy to pick up. I think like part of it is like, okay, I kind of have nostalgia for it, but I think the main reason was that game is easy to pick up. World record was fucking free. Like, I don't remember how much it's been improved upon. But like,
I could look if you
God,
want.
I'm gonna check.
I
I'm
have it
pretty
pulled up
sure
right
it's
here.
like, oh,
Let me go to obsoleted runs real quick. Oh shit, that's any percent. I gotta go. Right, that's
I just remember like at
oh
least when I
wait.
was I think I was probably looking at it out of curiosity and like I think I was gonna run it as like a meme run. I'm pretty sure I never planned on taking it seriously. And honestly, even today, I don't think I've taken it super seriously. But I think I kind of like out of curiosity looked at it. And when I was watching through the run, no offense to Wolfrin, uh, um,
Respect for him.
like
He's a pioneer.
I don't know I don't know the person, but I definitely looked at the run and thought like, yeah, this is like pretty unoptimized. So I could probably like, I'm pretty sure I got world record within. I think I might have done it the first day. If not the first day, it was the second day of running the game.
Yeah, I mean, on
Uh,
SRC, it doesn't have like former like obsoleted runs of yours. Like the first run you submitted was the world record for any percent right
yeah, at
now.
least usually I don't like if I know I'm like grinding if I know I'm gonna grind a game, I usually won't submit my first run. Usually I'll
Hmm.
wait to kind of like I was talking earlier, you get to that point where it's like you kind of have that deathless, relatively fast trick run. And then after
Yeah.
that is when you have to worry about all the little time saves, and I think that's usually like a good point. But like if you think you're gonna be at least a week before you get your next PB, usually I find it's a better time. I know a lot of mods don't mind, but I always kind of worry about like I don't want to like get a mod to have to watch and approve my run, and then they have to do the same thing a
Yeah,
day
like
later.
yeah, I understand that. I had that same sort of thing too when I started running Frights. My goal was like a 35 because I kept averaging a 38, and then I was like, "Oh, cool, I got a 35," and then I submitted it. I think I've told you this stories. Then, like, basically the next day you posted your 34, and I was like, "Who the fuck is this guy? This guy think he's better than me? I'm gonna go check him out on stream." And I don't know if I ever told you this part, but you were the first person I ever talked to in like a Twitch chat. Every other time I
Oh,
watched Twitch, I always lurked because like I watched like super popular people or like whatever, but you were the first person I talked to, and I bet I was awkward as hell.
I mean you
But
just like I mean I don't know from like I don't think it took that long to just like talk to you in Twitch. Like, I don't think you were in my chat that long before I started communicating with you through like the
yeah,
Scooby
probably not.
Discord and VCs. So like, I don't think yeah, you didn't come off as awkward or anything.
That's good.
At least it's just like at first you kind of don't really know people too well through just like literally just Twitch chat.
Yeah.
At least sometimes. But I think we got to know each other well, like relatively quickly, just through like a lot of communication.
Yeah, especially just like in the Discord, I feel like there was just always somebody in VC like all the.
Hmm.
Also, I'm sorry. Put up your water glass again. What is the bottom of it? It looks like a soda pop like bottle.
Oh, it is like a yeah, like
Is that a
okay.
Canadian thing or what? Like you'll put your milk in bags. You got like weird glasses. I mean, it looks cool.
Uh,
Like,
maybe when I'm done my water,
all
I
right,
can look. I don't
fair
know.
enough. I just didn't know. It looked like you took like a plastic bottle and then like cut off the top, but like it looked firm, so it was like glass. Sorry to go off track there. I was just kind of mesmerized by it. Oh my goodness, dude. This is going great so far. But so I forgot what I was gonna say now. Oh yeah, I want to talk about Lightmatter with you because Lightmatter. It was always a joy
Okay.
for me to watch you do Lightmatter stuff. We're bouncing around a little bit, sort of in like, I guess the timeline of you. Um, but Lightmatter, you started doing a little bit after, like you were done with Frights and stuff. I think I remember. Did you play casually on stream at some point, or maybe
No.
you played it? Maybe you was like in a VC or something. Maybe we
I
talked about it in a VC.
maybe we definitely talked about it. When I was well, I got into it through GDQ, or at least because like it was at least a month before the event, I want to say. They got us all in the AGDQ Discord. Or I guess for context, for those who know, I was scheduled to run Night of 100 Frights for AGDQ 2021. So probably around like November, December, they got us into the AGDQ Discord, and I met Lycos, who was commentating the Lightmatter run that was scheduled for AGDQ, and like he was trying to
Oh.
shield the game, and I was like, okay, I'll check it out, and I think I do actually remember. I'm pretty sure I watched a trailer for Lightmatter like at least a year before I played it. Um, when Steam Winter Sale was going on, then the game was like $10 or something, and it looked pretty cool. And I was like, sure, I'll check it out. And that game is actually like really cool. If you're a fan of like Portal, it definitely gives you like Portal vibes. It's like a really cool first-person puzzle game. It's like 4-ish hours long, so you can beat it in like a
Mm-hmm.
day. And then after that, I was like, sure, I'll check it out. Lycos definitely advertised it as like an all movement, no RNG run, which it technically is. Um, and that like I was definitely getting like kind of frustrated at Frights at that point. But by like November, my motivation to run Frights, or I feel like November, December, my motivation was definitely like, I'm gonna practice this game for GDQ. Um, and that's kind of it. And like after GDQ is basically when I mostly stopped running the game. So I picked up Lightmatter, and
Mm-hmm.
that game I think is like really cool. There's a lot of like I think it was interesting going from like a console platformer to like a PC platformer with that's in like first person because there's a lot of tiny things you can do with like mouse movement in that game. And I think even now,
Oh.
like
Okay.
comparing my run to world record, I think it literally is just like those tiny little things, especially with like using the mouse, like it's like half a second here and there that adds up across like
Mm-hmm.
almost 40 levels in the game. So yeah, I think that run's really cool. I think eventually it does become a lot more trick based than it initially seems. And that game also doesn't really have like I guess I don't know how most games are, but like Matter is basically it is like go 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 like all the way to the end. You don't really get too many breaks, and even the very last level of that game has like quite a few jumps that I wouldn't say are 100%
Yeah.
consistent. And the first big reset point of the run is like 7 minutes in. So I think like the fact that I have to like go 7 minutes in, like I'll usually never reset before the 7 minute point. So I have to like do that over and over. And then even the very last level of the run can kind of kill it. I think that made me like lose motivation to run the game. So I ran it at Midspring Speed Fling last
Mm-hmm.
March. It was like March or April. So I ran it then. And then after that, I think I was done with the game. I think
Okay.
it's a really cool game. Definitely,
That light matter was what I thought you did ESA for. So that's where it got. I thought that's what it was, but I got that completely mixed up. But yeah, because did you get what was it? It's a 40. Oh yeah, you guys don't you do you don't count loads. Um
we recently switched to in-game time, or at least like
yeah.
soon before I started running or stopped running.
Yeah, did you get that 43 like before or after the
Uh,
Midspring Speed Fling?
I'm pretty sure it was before.
Okay.
I definitely like I've had that like talk I've talked earlier about like kind of trying to get that run you're happy with.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely notice like especially when you're grinding a game for a marathon, you'll like I'll get that feeling of like, well, I could have this time. It definitely happened with Frights as well, where it's like I was doing no reset practice, and I realized like, okay, I kind of want the run I'm happy with, even though like I'm kind of done with this game. So then I'll start resetting.
Oh,
And
I
because
see.
like
Yeah.
uh for practicing for a marathon, like I'll be doing it quite a bit. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that was like before. I was like, okay, well, I could get this time, so I'll reset a little bit. Or maybe I just did no reset and said like maybe let's see if the run comes. I don't remember, but yeah, I basically got that, did the marathon, and it was like pretty
Mm-hmm.
much done with the game after.
Yeah. And I remember we've had discussions sort of about like kind of the pros and cons when you're like grinding or practicing, whether to do like a reset or like a no reset run where like, you know, reset, like when you do a no reset, you at least kind of like, you don't get stale if you're like trapped at like the beginning of the game, or like you can sort of complete a run, and like, you know, it's a more fluid motion of things. But then also like resetting it, it's, you can get better at those things in the beginning. And like it's like, I remember we've had this conversation before, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would you say that you like practice more with no reset runs than like actually resetting?
I mean, it'll help you get better at later sections of the game, especially if it's like a pretty reset heavy game. You definitely don't
Mm.
want to like practice the first level a bunch because you keep resetting to it, but then once you get past it, you have to reset because you're rusty at those later levels.
Yeah,
But I think it kind of can depend on the person, like how much your time you're really putting in.
that's very true. Yeah, because like if you have more time on your hands, then probably something like a reset run would be more beneficial than like a no reset run, or just
Hmm.
like, you know, how much time you want to put into the game. But from what I remember watching you do Lightmatter, I would say, but also I might have been watching when you were practicing for um Midspring Speed Fling, was no reset runs. Um, but I think the two main tricks I remember in that game have to deal with like jumping on really weird. I'm gonna botch this, but like it's like jumping on pipes, and because for anybody who doesn't know Light Matter, the kind of idea of the game is that you can only step in places with like light in them. And so the whole puzzle is that you would light up the room in specific ways to get you through the room. Um, but I remember there were two jumps in particular, and I think maybe one of them was at the 7 minute mark you were talking about, and then the other one
Hmm.
was in, there was like a huge fan in the room. Those were the,
Yeah.
I remember those were two things. I don't know if you wanted to go into a bit more detail about what those were.
I
Um, they were
yeah.
similar
So
in a way.
yeah. So the one that's like 7-ish minutes into the run, that's called lamp jump. Um, and what's really hard about that is you kind of have to like jump up onto a platform, and that platform is like entirely made. It was like is covered in shadows, and then like Cole was saying, like if you touch the shadows, you die. So, but luckily the back part of the platform you can actually uh jump off of. So you kind of have to like it's just a very precise jump from like the back part of the platform. And you want to get it relatively quickly. You don't want to delay too long, but like the faster you go, the more likely you are to mess up. And it can be like really scary. And if you die, it's like probably like 10-ish seconds of time loss, which I don't think definitely the lower you go, 10 seconds can definitely mean quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the giant fan room jump, I still don't know how it works, and I still don't know how. I'm pretty sure I got a first try in my PB. I don't know how. I have
Yeah,
no clue how that
I think
jump works. I'm pretty sure I failed it like I at Midspring. I don't. I want to say like I failed it multiple times and then just decided like okay, I'm gonna do it as intended. Um, but that second, yeah, the fan room jump is probably like at least a 10-ish second time save. And then yeah, so lamp jump on its own is like I want to say 15-20 seconds. And if you die to it, it's like 10 seconds of time loss. So
oh,
both of
okay.
those definitely contributed to like this game can be kind of frustrating to run sometimes.
Yeah.
But
And
there was also like quite a few jumps like in the middle of the run, especially if like you're trying to be very fast and precise, that you could mess up as well.
yeah, I just remember specifically at lamp jump, it would be one of those times where I think you're very good. I just think you're one of the greatest like people who can like kind of commentate, even when you're just like casually kind of just streaming. Like, I think you're really good at sort of like kind of continuing to talk or like keep a conversation going.
Thank you.
Even if you're not in like a VC, but I just remember that when you were speedrunning that game, when you got to lamp jump, that would be like the one moment where you like stop talking and like go
Oh yeah.
like sharply inhale and but that like a trick like that sort of reminded me of the sort of like maybe one of the benefits of doing something like a no reset run. Just because that's a trick earlier in the run because it's like a 40-minute speed run. So
Yeah.
That's sort of just what reminded me of that. Did you have a commentator for was it like Oz or something?
I think Oz was supposed to, but then was like unable to make it, which was
Oh, okay.
unfortunate. So I think I pretty much soloed that. I don't remember what happened at Midspring. Midspring was kind of a mess on the technical side. From my end, the crew did a fine job on their
Oh,
part.
okay. I
Um,
was about to be like,
but I definitely Lightmatter is a really cool game that is optimized very poorly. And optimized, I mean like how the game runs. It's a
oh,
very poorly
okay.
optimized game. So
Hmm.
I actually noticed if you look back, the first like little bit of the run was like very choppy. Either on the video or my audio. I don't remember which one. And then I noticed I accidentally had my recording on, which is like taking
Oh.
GPU power.
Oh, so did
And once I
I
turned my
see.
recording off, it was fine. Even though normally I use RTX voice so that like people don't have to hear my key clicks.
Hmm.
But like I've done it before where I'm pretty sure like I turn RTX voice off and I've recorded and I've streamed like that just fine. But for some reason at Midspring, like it just the game shat itself. So
Oh.
like the run
Oh,
was like but because of me, like it was on mine. The people who ran the event did a fine job. But on my end, it
man.
was just like a technical shit show. So it didn't go well, or
Oh,
that didn't go well.
I
And
think.
then for some reason, that's the only time like RTX voice off, recording on. Like I'd been practicing that way, like in
Oh,
case I
okay.
PB'd or something.
Yeah.
But for some reason at Midspring, it just didn't want to work with the
Just
exact
didn't
same
like it.
settings. Heck,
That's weird.
it was even easier settings because my streaming bitrate was lower.
Oh.
So I have no idea what happened.
uh,
And then that was also the only time in like the 50 or so hours I've played Lightmatter, Midspring was the only time the game has ever crashed on me. And that was like midway through the run.
really? I don't
Yeah.
remember that. Oh my goodness. That's actually crazy. I think I actually remember that because I was doing because that's when I was still like in college and that was like at the pinnacle of like homework because I was like a little bit before like kind of exam prep started for me.
Hmm.
Um so I don't think I watched it, but I think Nastani was and he was like, "Bro, it ain't looking so good." And I was like,
Yeah,
wow, I didn't know that was the only time though that it crashed. That's
yeah.
crazy. That sucks though. But
Yeah, that game is I think it's a really cool game casually. If you're playing the game casually, I don't think these issues will affect you much, but that game is not optimized well.
oh man, that's crazy. Do you know? Do like people know why it's like that? Was it only for
Um
like that event, or was it like that for streaming at all, or no?
I think the game like is a lot more demanding on your hardware than it should be. Like that was, and that's like outside of Midspring.
Okay.
But I think part of it is that's just like it's a 3D graphics indie game. It's a small indie studio that made the game, so I'm
Yeah.
definitely not like expecting it to be like super highly optimized. I think they still came out with a great product. Like I definitely still like a high game. I think really cool game still. But yeah, because it's like a small indie game, and I assume most indie games don't use like 3D graphics, or at least they're harder to work with. That's my assumptions. But that most likely
Okay.
led to it to be harder to optimize.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't really know that. It does look like a very pretty
Mhm.
game though. I
Yeah.
remember speaking of pretty games, even though I'm not a very big fan of RPGs. Was at about this time, you were also starting to run Zero no Kaseki,
Yes.
which is like, you went from speedrunning like 3D platformers with like controllers, and then you switched to like a PC game that's like in first person, still a
Mhm.
platformer, and now you switch to a PC game that's an RPG entirely. Super
I
long
mean,
speedrun
you're
compared to like
forgetting
other
about
things
who.
that you've done. Oh well, oh
I mean,
okay.
you're
Who's
forgetting
watching
about who's
who?
watching who.
Okay, yeah,
And
all
oh,
right.
and Momodora. I ran Momodora as well.
That's
Not
right.
at a
Wait,
super high level, but I ran that game.
I just realized you didn't submit anything for that.
I've or that game was kind of weird. With Momodora, I kind of got to a point where it's like, okay, now it's the little time saves, but they also discovered like a pretty big trick that probably saves like 5-ish
Uh,
minutes on the run. And I
what is
don't
the big
think
trick?
they were entirely sure what they wanted to do with it.
Actually, I
I'm
think
not
I
upset about the
remember.
big trick or anything.
I remember you
Um,
telling me this actually, or I think just when that was found.
yeah, I don't think the big trick didn't kill like my motivation to run the game or anything, but it was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna wait for someone to like route in this new trick properly, and I'll wait to see like what the new meta is.
Was it the
I'm
first
definitely more
Momodora
one to
game?
like, it is Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight.
Okay, I'm
But
just
I'm
looking
definitely
now.
someone to kind of like I want to just like see the current route and run that. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not the biggest person like try and like route things out myself.
You
So
don't
I'm
mind
like,
like most of the time you don't mind like small things though. It's normally like the
yeah,
things that big.
yeah, I've definitely like actually going back to Zero no Kaseki, I've definitely like tried to like route small things into that game. Um, but yeah, sorry, you were asking me about that game.
Well, no, I mean it's fine. We can go anywhere. But just out of curiosity, do you know what the trick in Momodora was? Like, did it affect like
Uh,
most categories? Like, I want to. I'm a little
so
curious now.
I believe it was a type of door clip. And that basically rerouted the order in which you get some of the items and fight some of the bosses.
Okay, so it's like a bit of a
So
sequence break.
yeah, and it
Okay.
would change like quite a bit in the route. So I'm like, I'm still like, even now, I'm still just kind of sitting here being like, okay, I'll wait for someone else to route it out, and once it's like a solid route, I'll probably pick that game up again because I think that's a really cool speedrun.
Okay. So you are so well. I mean, just looking at it here, I mean, it's like at least with any percent. It's been a while since somebody's done a run. Um, which category did you do the most? Like, was it any percent? And like, there's different
Yeah,
difficulties.
I did 80% normal, so like the main
Okay.
category. But if you
Okay.
notice the route type legacy, that is like the old route. Um
Oh, okay.
I don't believe there's a like you can just filter. I don't believe there is a glitched run yet, or at least one that hasn't been uploaded.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that either. So when somebody does kind of just like do that and smooth it out a little bit, you said you're probably gonna like come back into it then.
Yeah,
Okay. I didn't know that it changed the. I know you said that there was a big trick that was found. I didn't know it changed it this much though.
yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that
Um
game because you were really. I remember like that was when you were. Um, that was like right at the end of you doing Frights. I remember you were really hyped to play that game, and you showed me the boob
yeah.
lady, and I was like, I don't understand this game, but sure, it's got. And I remember you were saying like if you get hit or you die or something, you use like a ton of time to her.
Yeah, that game is very punishing. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
there's a mechanic in that game where if you beat a boss without getting hit or taking any damage, you get a special item. And all bosses except for one and the final boss, the items are routed in. So
Oh,
uh,
okay, that's interesting.
it's like so if you get hit in a boss fight, you are losing like 30 seconds to maybe upwards of 2 minutes. Um,
That's a
so
20-minute
that's
speed
it's a
run.
very punishing game to run. But I think it's like when things go right in that game, it's a very satisfying game for both
Oh,
movement and
I
boss
bet.
fights.
I definitely bet. I mean, especially something like that too. Um, yeah, I completely forgot that this game existed. um, but
It's a cool game.
yeah, I'd never heard of it before. But you said it was like it was on Switch. Yeah, it was on Switch. So I guess I could.
It's on Switch, but on
Most people do
Steam, like if it
PC.
yeah, if it ever goes on sale on PC, it's like $5 or something. I definitely think it is it's worth your time, even at least casual.
Okay. Well, cool. That's something interesting to see from you in the future if people dip their toes before you with that.
Hmm.
But Zero no Kaseki. So
Yes.
we're jumping from you doing 3D platformers to I guess like a 2D platformer and who's watching who if you really want to get that specific about it. And then you jump
Back
to
to
doing
3D
back to
platformers.
3D platformer, but it's in first person. And now you're doing something completely different, which is an RPG. Um, so I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to tell the story about that. I know you played the games casually and you love them to
Hmm.
death. You talk about them all the
Yeah.
time. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
the Trails or Kiseki series are probably my favorite like series of all time. The game that
Damn.
comes after Zero, Ao no Kiseki is like easily my favorite game of all time. Um,
Sheesh, dude.
and those the 9 games that are out in English right now like comprised a lot of what I played casually during quarantine across like 9-ish months on and off.
Okay.
But I think ever since I started speedrunning, I think I was always interested in like the idea of running an RPG.
Okay.
Just kind of the idea of like, okay, maybe it's like this isn't a lot of movement based, but it's a lot of like adaptation and thinking on the fly, and I like the idea of that. So I decided to just kind of like, I mean, I guess at the same time I was playing through the Trails series casually. So I decided to like kind of check out what some of the runs are like. And I think the Zero run, like the first like 15 minutes of the run, I think are like insanely interesting in terms of like the precise strats that are used. And it's using like everything the game has to offer to get through the early fights quickly, and then also, uh, for anyone that doesn't know that run, you clip into a new game plus dungeon, and you use very precise like strats and like items and such to defeat these like enemies in the new game plus dungeon. And again, like 15 minutes into the run, you are max level in the game. And I think watching that, I watched one of DeWolf's runs from RPG Limit Break. And I saw that, I was like, okay, this is like insanely cool. And I think the rest of the run is cool as well. But I think like the first 15 minutes is like, damn, this is like I love this. I should try it out. And also that run being at the time the world record was like 117. And now it's been brought down to sub-hour, so
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like pretty easy to pick up, especially compared to like you think of like RPG speedruns and you think like a lot of those are at least in the Trails series, the next shortest one I believe is like 2.5 hours. And you'll see like a lot of RPG speedruns be like 3 to 4 hours or
Yeah,
something.
that's a norm.
Usually like kind of depending on like kind of like what kind of mechanics the game has or like skipping encounters. But I think Zero being short and having some like really interesting strats I liked made me like learn that game. But it's funny. Another runner, Shinoa, otherwise known as the End, was he's like been a long time like Trails speedrunner. I think he's run like every game that's out in English. Um, or like almost
Really?
every game.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's like run almost every game. Like coincidentally, the same time I picked up Zero, he picked it up as well and rerouted a whole bunch of things. And actually, like, I want to say at least 10 minutes was just rerouting and just cutting out like unnecessary items. And then
Okay.
he brought the game to sub hour, which was like
Mm-hmm.
insanely cool. So I kind of like I talked a little bit earlier. I kind of want to. I saw he was rerouting things, and it's like every day he'd be like, "Okay, take this item out or do this fight a different way." So like I kind of stepped back a bit for a week, and just be like, "Okay, I'm gonna wait for this route to be solid, and then I'll pick this game back
every
up."
every game that you just put yourself in, it just gets rerouted.
Yeah. The game at least is in a solid place now. I
That's
eventually
good.
got to a point, um, where it's like honestly I wasn't sure my time save was. And like I know I talked earlier, it's like believe there's more time there like just you just gotta trust that there's more time save than you think. But then I decided to like side by side compare my run to Shin. And then I realized I'm not running on an SSD and he is.
That's
And
right. I
we count
forgot that
loads.
was, yeah, that's right.
Um, so I don't know how much that saves. I want to say at least a couple minutes, but it's like it's really hard to estimate because it's like probably like a tenth of a second for every load. But obviously,
That
there's a
can add,
lot of load.
yeah, it adds up. So,
It'll add up over an hour.
yeah.
So I honestly don't know the exact time save, but I do have an SSD now,
That's,
and
yeah, I
I
remember
should get
you
back to
said.
running that game because I really like that speed run. I think another thing that makes that run cool is the turbo mode. Which for anyone who doesn't know,
Yeah.
you can hold down a button in Zero no Kaseki, and everything will run at 6 times the regular speed. So on the field, there's like trying to avoid enemies and such, and there's like you gotta memorize a lot of where enemies they'll like patrol a radius, but their spawn within that radius is random. So there's a lot of knowledge in like knowing where enemies can spawn and like trying to like approach that area slowly, but you're still trying to hold down turbo as much as possible for like time save. And I think there's like a handful of sections where you literally just need to go around and talk to select NPCs. But because you're running the game at like 6 times the regular speed, I think it makes it a lot more interesting because like that's no longer free. There's room for error if you like get
Yeah.
stuck on
Hmm.
something. And I definitely
That's just,
find like the
uh, I'm sorry. That's just built into the game, that turbo?
like it's okay. So the game originally came out in I want to say like 2010 for
Yes,
PSP.
2010. Yep.
And then I think a couple years later for PC, the original PC release never had it. Um,
Okay.
but also original Zero was never released in English. But then a team known as the Geofront localized Zero, and as they localized, they didn't just localize the game; they added in a lot of like quality of life features to kind of put it up there with some of the other Trails games that got PC
Okay.
ports, like the Trails in the Sky games and Trails of Cold Steel games, which have like very nice PC ports. So like a lot of like kind of like PC quality of life features you expect. And they also added in the turbo function, which was present in every like English PC release of all the other Trails games.
Okay.
The Geofront patch actually so I mentioned like so that was kind of like a fan thing. The NISA, the current publishers for Trails, actually like teamed up with Geofront now and are planning to officially release it on like PC and consoles in I believe
Oh,
next
okay.
year. Um, Fortunately, that means you cannot get the Geofront patch now, but I do believe we're still allowing it for speedruns.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, at
Um,
least we know. We did ask one of the first things when that partnership was announced. One of the first things was luckily one of the members in the Trails speedrun community reached out to NISA, and asked like, hey, can we still stream this stuff? Because like I don't think it
oh
was like
yeah.
a taboo thing now, but it's
Mhm.
like you're technically making it in like its own like or attached to the official release. Um, but even then, the Geofront patch was always intended for a legitimate copy of the game. Like I did actually have to like go and buy Zero no Kaseki, and then the Geofront
Okay.
patch literally did just patch it. That was a lot of answers to is Turbo built into the game?
Yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted too.
No,
I was
it's
just
all cool.
curious. Um,
Um,
But
Yeah,
you
I don't think any games were originally released with it.
okay?
Um, but that was definitely something that started to get introduced when they started like localizing the Sky games, which are like the first games in the series to PC.
Okay.
To my knowledge, I might be wrong on that.
Yeah, because I know that they're like, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of RPGs. There's definitely some that I do want to play, but I know that like normally
Like Trails.
like uh, I don't know about that. I don't know. I still need to play Dang and Rampa and like Sonic Team Racing or something like that. But I just know that like normally a turbo like speed up thing's like an emulator sort of thing. Like it's not normally something
Hmm.
like kind of built into a game. So that's why I was kind of just curious about it. I wish Dang and
I think
Rampa had a turbo button though. That'd make it a lot easier.
it
I'm just
does,
joking.
dude. It
I know.
does.
I know. I know.
Like every VN has a turbo button.
But
I want to say like they like RPGs have like slowly been trying to incorporate more like quality of life things. At least like kind of having that like access like on the fly. Like I know Pokemon, I believe ever since the very first game, like if you go into the options, there's like you can switch like turn animations off. And I think some more
yeah.
recent RPGs have like kind of been incorporating that, but have like a dedicated button. So it's like with Trails, it's like you don't have to go into like the options menu. You just have to like hold down this button and things speed up. I know the Neptunia games, which as RPGs they're fucking terrible, but
I
I
love
know
those
those games.
games. Those are some of
I
my favorite
no,
things
you
ever.
love them because you haven't played them.
I love them because I got to do funny voices on your streams, and they're some of the greatest things that I've ever done in my entire life.
And
It's
then
so good.
Neptunia is great when it's a visual novel. It's great when you have to play it as an
It's
RPG. It sucks.
yeah.
But
Uh,
back to the main point. That game also has like if you hold down a button in that game, it just like will skip any animation. And like that game like it knows it has like 30-second animations for some of its like super flashy things. So it's like kind of like a necessary thing. I feel like a lot of RPGs have been doing. I know I want Bravely Default, and I want to say some Final Fantasy re-releases have like started allowing you to change like how often you do encounters or like, random encounters to the point where
really?
like yeah, I remember Bravely Default. They straight up let you turn them off if you want to.
That's
I'm pretty
crazy.
sure that like the games are still like balanced around like expecting you to fight them, but it's like okay, you're going through this dungeon again, or it's like maybe you have to go through a dungeon and then leave to heal. It's like you don't want to go through it
Okay,
all
then
again,
yeah.
so it's definitely like very like convenient quality of life features that RPGs have like been incorporating, which is like very nice.
Okay. I so was there like a difference when you started running Zero no Kaseki compared to like other speedruns that you've done? Was the mindset pretty much just the same really? It was just you're doing kind of different things in the game.
Yeah, I think the mindset was really similar. It's just like, yeah, you're playing an RPG now. But I think a lot of the improvement came down to having to memorize things and the order you do things.
Oh
And because
yeah.
there's like a lot of like you'll revisit like the same place at like certain points. And things like that. And I think a lot of the time save at first just comes down to like not having like I remember how I had to use notes when I first started to just make sure I have like the order of everything
Yeah.
set
I
up.
was gonna ask you about that too, if you had notes.
Uh, Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
used notes when I started. I'm pretty sure a lot of runners like will always use notes for like some of the longer runs because like all like the other trails runs again like at least 2.5
Yeah.
hours.
That makes sense.
Um, but yeah, for zero it's like it's an hour, so it shouldn't be like too bad to memorize. But once I got the hang of that, like I think that like just is where a lot of time save comes from, especially with like again, there's a lot of places you have to like revisit at certain times. There's a lot of in-rests that you have to remember.
Okay.
And there's also a lot of like there's not too many shops. There's like not too many shopping trips you have to do in Zero, but you definitely like it'll take you a few times, I feel like, to memorize like everything you need.
Okay. And Another thing too is when I watched you run Zero no Kaseki as well, there would be like did the RNG ever get to you at all? Because like with most of the runs that you've done before, RNG didn't really like I don't. Is there even RNG in Lightmatter? There's like some with Scooby at the end,
No.
but like
Well, that I guess that's technically not RNG, but there's I can talk about fighting the game if you want me to.
okay,
We've had
yeah,
this
sure,
conversation
yeah,
before. Actually, I guess
yeah,
I'll talk about RNG and Zero first, though. I don't, at least right now, it's never really gotten to me. I think
that's
it's
good.
like it's an hour run. Like an hour is still an hour, but it's like kind of not the worst thing. And I'd honestly say like the RNG is not so bad. I think the mid game is very nice. You pretty much only have to worry about like the first like 15 minutes or so can be it's
Okay.
pretty RNG heavy if you're trying to get an optimal run. I'm still kind of not sure where it's going to end up because I feel like with the run being sub hour, I could eventually try to go for that like almost optimal run
Mm-hmm.
or get something like really low. So I'm still kind of not sure how far I'm gonna like try and take that game. But there's definitely like quite a bit of RNG in the early game. It can be frustrating at times because you kind of just have to go through the same thing over and over. And
Yeah.
then the end game is also pretty RNG heavy. Or it's not like RNG heavy, but there's like a lot of adaptation you'll have to do.
Okay.
There's kind of like four final fights you have to do. The first like three are mostly okay. The final boss of that game is a whole like
Yeah.
story in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely had like so funny story is there's a glitch. We don't know how to cause it, but it causes the final boss to do the same attack over and over. And
Oh. Okay.
if you can get him to do a certain attack over and over, that's really good. Because there's certain attacks we don't know what triggers them. We literally have one person in the community has gone into the game's code and kind of looked at like all the potential things that could trigger an attack. So it's like certain HP threshold or like I think there's a list of it, but like things like HP threshold or like character HP threshold probably, or like they have enough of like CP, which is like a exclusive like thing to that game. But like things like that, and there's like a whole list of like I want to say like probably 15 or so things that can trigger an attack, and there's two that are attached to a lot of moves in the game, and we don't know what those are, and those are the triggers for
That sounds
the
so bad.
two. There's two specific moves we don't
Oh.
want the final boss to use because they deal a lot of damage, target multiple party members, and can potentially inflict like statuses to waste even more turns. So we want to avoid those attacks. And I kid you not, at least the three runs I found on SRC of that Shin did, every time he got the glitch to work. And I know we had like I want to say like a whole week where we were trying to research like what can we do about this. And yeah, Shin has no idea how he got it to activate. And then like trying to like recreate things. He has like no idea. It eventually did lead to me finding an alternate strat, which I haven't like fully timed out, but it seems a lot more consistent than trying to do like what Shin did, but without like the glitch. If we find out why the glitch occurs, it would be super nice. But we also have I didn't mention the kind of like official English release of Zero no Kaseki that's coming out next year is the actually Zero no Kaseki Kai. So it kind of like they're updating some things. Think of like it's like the same game, but they're adding a few things. There's like a couple things in like the later Trails games that are like kind of referenced to have happened, or like kind of like retcons that they're adding in to the Kai version. So
Okay.
maybe that will become the new meta for speedruns. But at least for now, I've kind of like had to do an alternate strat for the final boss
Hmm.
because like it's RNG can be a pain sometimes with it.
Yeah, and then did you want to I want actually yeah, I want you to talk about you kind of like when you get to that point where it's like it's beyond your control. You worded it perfectly a few moments ago
I,
where it's
I, I
like
call it fighting the game.
yeah, fighting the game.
Um, it's like you're kind of like you want to do something and the game says no, and I think it's a very hard thing to describe. But I want to say it's like usually whenever you like mess up in a speed run and you get mad and you ask like, "Oh, why isn't the game like this?" I feel like that's usually the perfect moment to like describe fighting the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll just say like in like Scooby Night of 100 Frights, there's a lot of invisible ledges.
Yeah.
Some of which are easier to jump on than others. To the point where like some like Skull One I'd say are relatively free. Like I'd say you get that like 90% of the time. But then there's some like RBS and GGS where you need like pretty precise jump timings. And when you miss those, you're just gonna ask why? Why can't this just be like the Skull One ledge? Like why isn't
Yeah.
it like that? It's just it's completely arbitrary. I was like, you look at it, it's like this is completely arbitrary about like why it's like this. So you kind of get into that feeling of like fighting the game, and I think it's like you want to do something, and the game is just like you just want the game to be made slightly differently, and it makes your life 10 times
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
Like, oh, if only they tweaked this tiny thing. And I think that feeling of fighting the game is like one of the worst feelings you can have when speedrunning and even just playing a game casually. And I think like usually when I have to fight when I feel that a lot is when like I will usually stop running a game. I
Mm-hmm.
felt that a lot with Frights and Lightmatter. And that's kind of like basically why I stopped playing both. Like Frights again with like why isn't this ledge like this? Or why is this trick inconsistent like or at least even like the new like fishy skip. It's like you're kind of like
Yeah. Ooh.
you'll do
Yep.
the same thing over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you go through the water, sometimes you don't. And it looks
Mm-hmm.
like the same thing with like the NTSC fishy skip that was just found. We'll see what happens with that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the invisible ledges that are not created equal.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's like old
and
fishy
then
skip too. That one
mhm.
ledge. You know old fishy skip where
Oh
you jump
yeah,
in. There's that one ledge that's
yeah,
like a micrometer in length. It's like oh my goodness. But
yeah. It's like why is it like that? If only there was just like a flat platform that goes all across,
yeah,
then we wouldn't have had to try and
exactly.
change a new one.
Yeah.
And
Another
then what
thing or you go, excuse me.
I was gonna say I felt that a lot in Light Matter as well. There's a lot of jumps in that game. I was talking
Okay.
about both the lamp jump and the fan room jump that I talked about earlier are both tricks that very much I will get that feeling of like if
Hmm.
only it was slightly differently. Because like that game has a lot of jumps that are I guess not really glitches, but more just kind of like exploiting the terrain. And kind of just like Scooby, with that comes a lot of jumps that are not created equal
Yeah.
and can very easily lead to frustration.
Okay. So, what I was gonna say was with like with both because from the light matter it might sound like this too, but when you were doing like Scooby and light matter, did you have a problem with like inputs dropping at all, or not particularly?
With Frights, yes. Light Matter, I wouldn't say so. Or
Okay.
I think Light Matter requires you to be very precise with your mouse movements. And if you kind of like go through the motions assuming everything is fine, it can lead to you like messing up pretty easily. There's a
Okay.
lot of like if you kind of want to like flick the camera, press a button, flick back. Yeah, it could be like pretty tough sometimes. Like there's a lot of precision involved in that. Scooby, I think, is like pretty good at dropping your inputs, but part of that is like I mean, so it's like whenever you land in that game, there's like a full second when you can't jump again.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I think
Um,
it has to do with the animation too, just from what I've played.
yeah,
It's very weird.
uh, but that game can definitely like eat your inputs. There's like kind of weird things. It's like, oh, during your double jump, it's like you try to jump off the bat in GGS, and you inputted a little bit too early, so your double jump doesn't come out.
Hmm.
Which I mean, like, is technically it's like kind of. I don't want to say it's standard because like there's other games that don't have that problem. Or like I guess
Yeah,
maybe not maybe it was an intentional design decision, so I won't say it's necessarily like a problem, but not every game is designed that. You have games like Mario, like all the 3D Marios, like try to encourage you to jump when like immediately after touching the ground because that's how you like triple jump and stuff.
hmm.
And I'll think of like Banjo-Kazooie is a game I'm pretty sure you don't have to like wait till you're at the apex of your first jump before you do your
Oh,
second jump.
yeah.
Like things like that. Where definitely like I think that kind of like brings it back to like the idea of fighting the game.
Yeah, that's what
Uh,
I always think about. At least with Scooby, just because that's the main thing that I've ran is uh, sort of what I've kind of dealt with like fighting the game. That and like Fish Clip are like the two things.
yeah.
But with that's interesting with Lightmatter though with the mouse flicks. I never thought about your mouse being so important in that run until you said it because now that I'm thinking back at it, like you're controlling the perspective when with something like Scooby, you
Mhm,
the perspective is going to be the same no matter what.
mhm.
So
I think like the 3D platforms usually have like you're trying to take like the most optimal lines throughout the level. But with light matter, you have like thing where you're like kind of flicking back and forth to try and like pick up an object or something or hit a button and like turn around immediately after. Or like trying to usually there's a lot of points where like you'll place an object and immediately have to flick the mouse. So things
yeah,
like that. It's like there's a lot of precision involved, and I think that also like I think that contributes to like where a lot of like the enjoyment of the run can be. But it's also like I think it's like where a lot, and it's also where like a lot of improvement can come with like time save in that game because there's like
hmm,
so many little things where you have to do that.
yeah. With the mouse, I'm assuming there's probably something where it's like I know melee players or just I guess just fighting players where like you have the joystick and it like snaps back or whatever,
Hmm.
and it can was that sort of like a thing that can happen with like the mouse where you do a quick turn but then your hand kind of shakes a little bit or some like any sort of
Uh,
is it like that precise of things
I'd I'd
or of
say
movement?
most, or I'd say for most fighting game controllers, they don't have like snapback issues. I believe some GameCube controllers do have that issue, but you can mod them so that they don't.
Yeah,
And like games like Melee, they like definitely encourage that kind of modding. Um, trying to think like I I think with time it gets better. I think that the main issue I came across was kind of like moving my mouse and then like hitting left click to hit a button, kind of like under the assumption I hit it, and then I'd like flick back, but it's like, oh, I was just like barely
oh,
off,
I see.
so I have to turn
Okay,
back again.
okay. Yeah, I was just trying to like find some sort of like comparison because I didn't know if it's like if it was super detailed with that movement or not. But also just I also wanted to ask this question is something that I've always or at least when I've started when I speedran like Frights, like I was really big into sort of like menuing. And it's not incredibly predominant in that game, but in Zero no Kaseki, I mean it's an RPG. You're going through menus all the time.
Hmm.
How is it like how do you even begin to kind of learn something like that where it's like or at least well then again I haven't played that many RPGs but like there's just a lot of menus and like a lot of times where you're kind of just clicking or pressing the same button over and over again. It's like how do you get that like is that muscle memory sort of hard to obtain or like is that sort of something you kind of grow into like running that game as well?
I think it depends on which menu you're talking about. Things like trying to rest at the inn. is like something I'll try and like speed through. Though things like that game definitely doesn't like it if you try and go too fast on the menu, so I try and not like speed up too
Okay.
much. But usually I'll try to be like relatively fast. I think a lot of it isn't muscle memory, it's just kind of memorizing what I have to do. I'm memorizing
That's
what I'm supposed
true.
to do in the menu.
Hmm.
I think I've definitely seen like, have you ever seen like a Kingdom Hearts speed run? I think a lot of that is muscle memory, because those
Yeah.
menus are like very fast. But at least with like Zero no Kaseki, I don't think the menus can be that fast. So usually, usually it's not super intensive, and you can like
Okay.
get by just fine with like knowing what you're supposed to do.
Okay. I just
But
always wondered that from just like because I've only ever speedrun platformers. I didn't know if that was something. I feel like I would just always misclick it or like do like a wrong move or something like that. But that's interesting though. And I've kind of saved. This is a weird segue, but I've been saving this game for last because this is my favorite game that you've ever speedran, and I think you know what it is because it's the only one we haven't mentioned yet, and that's Wii
I'm
Party.
scared.
This is a very weird segue, but Wii Party is the best game you've ever ran, and I think most people who have watched your stream could agree with me on that one. Wii Party is bonkers. It's such a bonkers speedrun, and the fact that you got fifth place with Margaret Thatcher, like as the me, that's I wanted to save this for last. What even made you think about speedrunning Wii Party? Like
I'm I'm pretty sure I wanted a meme game for fun.
that was it? Okay. I didn't but but like what drew you towards Wii Party compared to some other like random like Wii
Uh,
Sports or even something like Mario Party?
Probably the fact that it's like short and not competitive. Wii Sports, I believe, is actually competitive.
Is it really?
At least
I'm
I
curious.
know. Well, I watch like speedrun compilations. It's definitely not uncommon for me to see
Actually, I
like
think I've seen
Wii parties
there
or like Wii Sports.
Wii Sports like golf is like a huge thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Golf, because I think somebody Salt made a video on it. Yeah, look, dude. Oh my god. Yeah, I forgot about that. But you kind of just chose Wii Party because it was just like not
like
many people had done it. It's like
it's just a funny casual speedrun I can do that's easy to pick up. I'm definitely more inclined to do these meme speedruns when I can literally just like, I mean, there's no fucking prep involved for Wii Party. You just play it. A lot of it's RNG.
oh my goodness.
Um, yeah,
Um, you
so
go.
I
I'm sorry. I
so
I just have
Wii
so many
Party was
questions.
yeah, Wii Party was just kind of like a meme thing. It was also like fun. I could do things like I could kind of meme around. So like I had like Mii's for a bunch of Frights runners. I like you mentioned Margaret Thatcher was in there as well. Um so it was definitely it was a funny time. And then got frustrating when it came to actually like getting a good run. That's
yeah.
definitely so I didn't just run Wii Party. I ran Wii Party U. Oh, specifically, for anyone wondering, I ran Board Game Island in Wii Party and then Highway Rollers in Wii Party U.
Yeah.
Which is basically just like the kind of like basic get to the end board game. And Wii Party U, I don't know why. I tried asking in the Discord and like could not get an answer, unfortunately. Like nobody really knew. But I always found like the first mini game was always like one of three mini games, and all of them were really bad.
This is
Like
for Wii Party U though, correct?
yeah, this is for Wii
Okay.
Party U specifically, where like all the mini games they give me at the start, it would like just cycle between the same three. I don't know why, but they were all like really slow games, and so
Yeah.
I kind of I was like, okay, well I can't deal with this. Maybe if one day I feel like I've put the Wii away for now and the Wii U. But I think I use Wii U for both of them. But if I ever feel like running those games again, maybe one day.
I can't deal
It's
with
been
this.
months.
I can't take
Well,
it
it's like
anymore.
Wii Party. The thing is, the Wii Party U Highway Rollers world record is much less optimized than Wii Party. The Wii Party world record is fucking crazy. It's like you,
Yeah, I
um,
mean, if you look, if anybody is looking at the leaderboards right now, it's, I mean, first place is 10 minutes, and like below that, it's like 16, 17. So,
yeah.
yeah,
But Wii Party U, I don't think I ever submitted it. I probably still have the
you,
recording if I ever want
yeah,
to.
you
But I
didn't, at least
believe
on here.
let me check. I can check. I can open up my splits right now. But like Wii Party U, I think I actually did want to go for a world record, admittedly, because I think
And
it was a lot more attainable.
ooh.
Um,
Did
where
you
am I?
just do like Board Game Island and Highway Rollers just because those were like the main ones, really, that people did?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I
Um,
assumed.
I don't know where my splits are. Um, let me check
Oh no.
the. Oh wait, here we go.
Here, I can pull up here.
Pretty, where I wanna load the. Huh,
Okay.
for some reason I don't. I think. Oh, I don't know what happened. I think live split. My live split isn't working well, and I have
Rip.
yeah, my times are gone. Like I have the files for the splits, but the
They're
times are
gone?
gone.
Oh no.
But I believe I had second place in Wii Party U.
Was it like a
I
25? Oh, you probably have the
should
recording.
upload that. Um, yeah, I definitely like I kind of planned. I have a lot of VODs saved because I wanted to make highlights for both Who's Watching Who and Wii
Oh,
Party.
yes. If you do that,
Um,
I will be so happy.
so oh wait, there's actually a I didn't realize. I think both of these world record or the first and second place on Wii Party U are like quite recent. Um,
Oh yeah, they are.
I believe it
Two
was
weeks
like
and 2 months ago.
yeah, I can like try and look through my
You
VODs,
don't have to right now, obviously, but
but yeah, I believe I had like a 28 or something. But I believe world record was like pretty attainable. Maybe not as much anymore, but at the time, they're
okay.
like you really didn't need that optimal
Hmm.
of a run.
And then the other people you played with, I know that you'd used like specific difficulties for just like there's a reason for like in the mini
Mhm.
games it's like so it would go by faster, but you'd also
Um,
want to like win certain ones.
yeah,
It
it's
was kind of
kind of
interesting
weird.
how it worked.
I honestly don't think anyone like dug too much into it. Not to discredit the Wii Party speedrun community, but I don't think anyone
Yeah.
dug too much
Okay.
into it. Because like, okay, you technically want them to be easy so you can more consistently win mini games. But on the flip side, if you make them harder difficulty, the endurance games will or it's like if you make them on the harder difficulty, games where you have to get to the finish will go by faster, but endurance games will be a lot
Yeah.
slower. I don't think anyone ever calculated that. Okay. Okay, hang on. I found it. My
Did you really?
PB in Wii Party U was apparently a 2846, it looks like.
So that'd be fifth place right now.
Yeah, it was
That's
like
pretty good.
respectable,
Yeah, it's not bad.
but I definitely know there's time save in there. I mean, you need a lot to go right. It's Wii Party U.
The most intense
But
speed run of all time.
yeah,
But yeah, so it looks like Wii Party U you'd use like a beginner, which actually kind of surprises me that you'd use beginner CPU. But then I know in Wii Party most people use like advanced or expert. Yeah.
that's the thing again, like I don't know if anyone ever like looked too much into it.
Yeah.
Like if I'm running it, I'm definitely just kind of like I don't think I'm gonna care that much. Maybe maybe Wii Party U has more endurance games, and I don't know. Because for the endurance games, you want them to be low difficulty so that they just die
Yeah.
early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just that's just one of my favorite moments of all time with you
It's
getting that run. And we were
the
in a call with Baz, and you got the dice roll right at the end, the perfect 6, and then you just if anybody, I'll, you know what, fuck it, I'll leave a link in the description of this podcast with that with that run. If you go to the end of that run, I'll timestamp it probably. Uh, it's me and Baz don't know if he got like a PB or not. He's right at the last door, which if you've never played the game before, that map, it's you have to roll once you get there. At first you have to roll 6 to open the door and like win the game, and that's when you end timer. But for me and Baz, it was delayed, so like Snowy didn't try to give it away, so you just see his face cam. He's just like gasping, and he's like smiling, and he's like turning his head, and he's like ah. It's one of my favorite moments with you. But yeah, I wanted to save this game for last because I think this was one of the most fun things that you've ever streamed.
it's yeah, and I'm just playing it for fun. Like I think it's a fun game to just kind of like get in call with people and like try and speed run Wii Party.
Yeah,
Like it's a good time. I
it's
mean, unless
really
like
really
during
good,
mini games, I'll like kind of goof off and stuff. Like when you got to like swing the Wii remote. Like
dude. It looked like
it's
you
just
were
a funny
jerking off a
time.
huge penis sometimes.
Whoa, whoa.
I'm just saying. I'm sorry if this gets, well, I don't
Oh,
even,
blame
but
Nintendo.
Nintendo. Oh my goodness.
Nintendo made me do it.
Nintendo. They do some weird sexual things sometimes. And the weird mo was one.
Your words, not
Hey,
mine.
oh, all right. Well, it's been an hour and a half. So I think we'll call it into the podcast here. Snowy, if you wanted to plug anything, go right ahead.
Yeah, I have my Twitch channel where I normally do speedrunning, and I've been kind of getting more into fighting game content recently with I mentioned earlier fighting games have really bad netcode. That was back in 2020. We are kind of we're kind of on the path of getting games with good netcode now. So now that I can actually play them online, I've been kind of getting into playing them more on stream. So like if you ever tuned into my stream, it's probably playing a fighting game or speedrunning something. And then I also have my Twitter at SnowyMoogle where I post random shit. You don't really have to follow that one. Um,
Oh my god. I know what
but
random
yeah,
stuff you post.
my Twitch twitch.tv/SnowyMoogle if you want to check me out streaming.
All right. Sounds good. And I'll put anything else. I'll put it all in the description, so you can go check them out. Thank you so much, Snowy, for joining me on this podcast.
Thanks for having me on. It was a good time.
No problem. This is the first one, so I probably said this at the beginning. I'm probably gonna make an intro, but if you, this is the first one, so anybody who's like, I want to see this runner on here, leave a comment. If this sucks, leave a comment to know how I can improve. If you like it, I don't care, leave a comment. That'd be nice. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. See you guys later.